All right, let's rewind it because now you're talking about the ADL.
Sorry.
We no, Whitney. Listen, I absolutely love you. If you want to get married, you let me know. You are the best. You are the one person that sits here and talks about all this stuff that, like, literally I'm echoing on my show constantly, how they're trying to create these narratives, how the war on terror was built for you and everybody else. The
It
surveillance
was.
state isn't coming. It's here. It's already in place. These technology companies, they can have a million hearings. Nothing's going to be done. They are arms of the National Security Agency. They are arms of DARPA, NASA, whatever you want to call it, the military industrial complex, name it what you will. It is now a technopoly, and it is not one nation state. Like you're reporting on the Israeli intelligence and their technology integrating in Western technology, integrating into the Chinese technology. That's everywhere right now. People don't understand it and can't comprehend it. And you're so good at trying to lay it out, right? And trying to explain it to people. Because right now, what we do have is now transparency in the fact we have a Congress, a Senate, and a presidential administration that all lean one way, and now can actually get some of this nightmare legislation passed through, such as
It's
this.
the uniparty more than ever. And I think Wednesday's events have enabled that too, because then you have all the people in the Republican Party. Now they are basically super isolated if they won't abandon Trump, or they join the uniparty, if they don't want to be super isolated and continue their political careers. And this is just so dangerous. Because we also have the fact that Silicon Valley has merged with the national security state, but also the DNC. Most of the top posts of the DNC are run by former Silicon Valley executives also. And, at the center of it, with the Silicon Valley thing, the sworn domestic terror thing, I want to get back to this if we can, just spend a little time on this. The ADL is so central to what's going on here, and that is I mean, it's nuts when you know about the ADL's history and where it comes from, because the same people that bring you the ADL brought you Jeffrey Epstein. And that is insane that they're the ones pointing the finger and saying this person's a domestic terrorist and this person's a domestic terrorist, because they traditionally go after people on the left and the right that are critical of Israeli government policy or policy that's in the interest of Israel's government. I mean, they are essentially a lobbying arm of Israel. But beyond that, if you go back into the ADL's history, they were set up in relation to the lynching of a man named Leo Frank. And Leo Frank, the ADL claimed when they were made, was lynched because he was Jewish. But in reality, it was because he raped and murdered an underage girl and was lynched by a mob of people that were mad that he did not get in trouble. It's worth pointing out that ADL is a spinoff of something called B'nai B'rith, which is sort of like a Jewish version of Freemasonry.
Yeah.
Yes. So Leo Frank was a member of that. And one of the top judges in New York at the time that helped get Leo Frank off is a man named Albert Cohn. That's Roy Cohn's father. Right. Roy Cohn would later go on to be a sexual blackmailer on behalf of B'nai B'rith and the CIA, and was Trump's mentor.
Yes. Absolutely,
right?
Was Trump's mentor. Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's the history of the ADL. But not only that, one of their biggest donors from close to the offset in the earliest decades of the ADL anyway, was Mayor Lansky and one of his top organized crime associates, Mo Dalitz, who ended up also getting awards from the ADL and all of this stuff. The largest donors to the ADL for most of the 1980s were the mega group billionaires like Ronald Lauder and the Bronfman family. And of course, Leslie Wexner of Epstein fame, also intimately involved in that mega group of billionaires. And these are the people that fund this. And this is the organization pointing fingers, the people that have used pedophilia blackmail for decades.
Well, think about this. I'm glad you mentioned the Bronfman family. And I just want people to understand, again, billionaires get separate rules than you do. And even when there's a huge cult, human trafficking, pedophilia ring such as Nexium that gets busted and is directly related to the Bronfman sisters, Claire Bronfman is able to work a deal where she basically goes to a country club. She's not going to pound me in the ass prison, guys. All right, I promise you that.
No way. Those people never do.
And again, Raniere is the one that takes the brunt of it. He's the front man. He's the guru. He didn't have any of the money.
Like Epstein.
Exactly.
Just wait and see what happens to Ghislaine Maxwell in a couple months.
Well, I think that right now what you're seeing is the cover-up crew on behalf of Les Wexner, because you have Les Wexner already being exonerated, very vocally in the media at first, but then disappearing because he's a kind old man that was taken advantage of by Jeffrey Epstein, needs to fade in the background.
Stupidest narrative ever.
And the narrative that now, we got Jean-Luc Brunel. We got Nygaard. And I think that right now, they're tying up whatever loose ends they need with Maxwell, Nygaard, and Brunel, and working out whatever deal they're going to do, and making sure that this thing's cut off, and that you can no longer get into the intelligence aspects of this and the high-level trafficking of these kids that would connect to anybody who's in the public eye right now.
And I think it's no coincidence either that QAnon, the PSYOP, has been so focused on pedophilia, and oftentimes like discrediting legitimate research on elite pedophilia or intelligence-linked pedophilia. We're having MSM saying Epstein investigations, the Epstein scandal, is a gateway to QAnon. Okay, so if they're going to start banning QAnon content, how long until they ban Epstein content? How long until they start scrubbing Epstein content from the internet because they say it inspires anti-Semitic hate because Epstein happened to be Jewish, and the people that bankrolled him, in a lot of cases, at least like with Leslie Wexner, also Jewish, ties to the Bronfman, things like that. I mean, it's a very slippery slope, and it's really dangerous when you think about it. And I really want to point out too, the ADL's ties with the FBI are really alarming because this same organized crime network that brings you the ADL back to the earliest days of the FBI compromised J. Edgar Hoover through sexual blackmail. And then they started giving his top officials prominent positions at companies they ran, like vice presidency offers, donating heavily to J. Edgar Hoover's foundation when that was set up, and things like that. And now you have the same thing going on now, the ADL, in the lead up to this new war on domestic terror, that they're basically choosing who the terrorists are and the criteria for what makes you a domestic terrorist, are hiring all of these with large salaries, longtime FBI officials, former DHS officials that worked in Bush, Obama, and Trump. You're going to work in all three administrations. I mean, you're as swampy as they come, dude. And this is really, really out of control. And also, it's worth keeping in mind that these billionaires, like mega group billionaires, their political views are very relevant because they are very, they're fascist. Basically, when you look at the politicians they fund, also in the state of Israel, mega group billionaires completely responsible for the political rise of Netanyahu, for example. And, the Likud party, Netanyahu's father, was a speechwriter for Vladimir Jabotinsky, who the first president of Israel used to call Vladimir Hitler because of how fascist he was. His successor, Menachem Begin, creates Beirut, and then later the Likud party. Albert Einstein and a bunch of prominent Jewish Americans wrote to the New York Times in the late 40s, do not let Menachem Begin into the United States. He is a terrorist and a fascist. These are the people that run Israel now, and a lot of that is thanks to this organized criminal syndicate that was, set up by Lansky and Dalitz and all of these other people that also developed close ties with the state of Israel and through the Bronfmans also, right? And a lot of these other billionaires, this is where they want things to go. These sort of ethno-nationalist, authoritarian societies, and they're claiming that they're trying to use generally speaking, the average American's rejection of ethno-nationalism against us to tell us that regular Americans are now domestic terrorists. It's really beyond surreal. I mean, there's really no other word for it. And so we have to be really careful about these domestic terror laws that they're going to start trying to push through, because they're going to define things that were previously not crimes as federal terror offenses.
Not even crimes. Let's talk about that right now. Things that are not criminalized in any way, shape, or form right now, that you cannot catch a misdemeanor for, let alone a ticket. You can't catch an ordinance ticket for.
Yeah.
They are trying to make, at the highest levels, a federal crime in which you can be detained indefinitely.
Indefinitely in DAA. Thanks, Obama.
And you know what? All you fuckers out there, all right, that are still holding on to this fucking Q-tard fuckwad bullshit. I'm getting fucking emails that the Insurrection Act has been passed and fucking laptops and Pelosi and fucking Cheyenne Mountain. You're out of your fucking minds. And you need to fucking have a come to God moment, because this is so fucking dangerous where, again, we've warned about this forever, and these people still think there are superheroes behind the scenes that are going to help them, Whitney. This is insanity. And what they're trying to criminalize is, again, our ability to do what they did in the civil rights movement and fight back. That was a key point that we didn't hit on before. I've been talking about the Great Resistance. I've been talking about how we need to do this at local levels. Well, now
it has to be local now. You can't do crap in the Capitol now. That's passed.
Yes. So again, if we don't get going now, I was on a call with, some of these conservative influencers last night, and the ignorance of some of these people just on history in general and what's going on was kind of stunning. But it
may be intentional ignorance, Jason. I mean, I don't know who you were talking to, but there's a lot of really shady narratives being put out by people on the left and the right.
Yeah.
And I understand why you're really mad at QAnon. And I totally get that, right? But I mean, I think too, what has happened since Wednesday has driven a lot of QAnon people. They may actually become radicalized without government help, some of them, because of a lot of the rhetoric going on. I understand the attraction of terms like Q-tards and stuff like that, but I think it's up to people like us as much as possible to try and keep this division from ripping the fabric of the country apart. And maybe some of those Q people can be reached, especially that it's more obvious than ever those predictions are not coming true.
Well, I get it.
And they're being put in a trap. A lot of them, I've talked to them, some of them over the years, because a lot of them followed my Epstein stuff and whatever. A lot of them are well-meaning. Some of them, maybe not.
I agree there.
Naive, obviously, to buy into that. But it's just, calling them names isn't going to help us reach them. And I think we need to really try and understand that, even though it's hard, because, look what's happening to the country. It really sucks that so many people that would normally be the first to defend the United States in civil liberties are now just, doing this armchair trust the plan thing.
It just blows my mind.
I think your message of we have to get local, we have to be active. Maybe those people, will listen to that. But what we have to do is we have to try and ratchet as much as we can, at least, legitimate people and independent media. We have to try and ratchet this rhetoric down while the mainstream's doing it, trying to ratchet it up. And we have to make it very clear to people that what's going on is that this is not a war between Trump supporters and, Biden supporters. This is the elite fucking all of us over. And if we don't start to realize that as a country, that this is really a class war.
Thank you.
Warren Buffett a few years ago, who, by the way, is like the third top guy at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who's been very involved in a lot of the fuckery over the last year. He was pretty open a couple years ago that, there is a class war and we're waging it and we're winning. And they are winning.
No,
and
they
as
are.
long as we are pointing at the people across from us because they have a MAGA hat or because they have a Biden bumper sticker on their car, who do you think's going to keep winning? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
No,
we have to really make it clear that it's elites versus us. And we can reach people on any side of the right and any side of the left with that kind of rhetoric.
I agree. I agree. I just, it's very hard for me. Like some of these people I actually talked to over this week, right? And
I know it's frustrating.
I'm getting the stuff now about all the stuff I just flipped out about, that it's still going, that there's, you know what I mean? This insurrection.
Yeah. It's wild. And Lynn Wood needs to be slapped in the face with, I don't know, a frozen ham or something.
I'll tell you what. So Jesus, it's funny. So again, these are the DMs I'm getting from people I respect, that I'm talking to, that I've had these conversations with, where I've tried to explain to them that this is fantasy land and nothing's going to save us but us. And you're right. I get off on these tangents. Thank you for reining me in. But at the same time, it's beyond frustrating.
But save that rhetoric and that anger for the QAnon grifters, the influencers that have taken these well-meaning people and driven them so deep into la la land that they don't even know what reality they're in anymore.
But some of those people actually believe it too, I believe.
Well,
like,
some of them, but I think a lot of them are grifters.
I do. But, all right, so for instance, I'll just say this. The conversation I had last night had nothing to do with QAnon people, okay? None of those people were in there. When I talk about ignorance, somebody that was on the call goes, do you guys know about the Reichstag fire? And he starts going into the Reichstag fire as like, this is maybe our moment. I'm like, brother, yeah, I know what the Reichstag fire is, and I get it. I know what that's what I mean by ignorance. Like, they are still on the level where they don't even understand that we've been thrown to the wolves again 20 plus years ago. Yeah, exactly. And that almost shook me. Like, because let's talk solutions for a minute, because who knows how long I get you for, Whitney.
I can go a while longer, so don't worry about it.
Excellent.
I'll let you know.
That technology, it can use to empower us or enslave us. And now with Parler being just taken off servers, like they're taking it next level. This should show the collusion of Twitter, Facebook, Google, Amazon, all these big tech companies that are, again, arms of the NSA, in my opinion, where they can just, black you out. So we need our own operating system, period.
That exists, by the way, Jason, a non-Android operating system for Android. It's called Graphene OS, and there's also another one called Copperhead OS, because I saw your stream talking about that the other day.
Well, I'll tell you what. Exist. So when I was on this conversation, it's kind of what I led with. And, again, if we could get it so, these coders could set up online stores where they're getting masses of old phones from the last few years, the older stuff that gets refurbished at a discount price, and then loading new firmware, and you can literally buy it for grandma or Uncle Joe or Christmas time, or get it delivered to you via mail, and it's almost identical to these other operating systems, but again, 100% censorship free. That's really where we have to be, because obviously you've seen crypto explode. People, you can follow Whitney Webb also on Rockfin, but a platform like Rockfin gets too big and wants to say they won't treat them exactly like Parler in the media, or exactly like Gab in the media, etc. So I think that's where our technology has to get better, and then localized. And we have to figure it out. We have to give it to our loved ones and explain why it's important, and understand that's not going to stop them from spying on us. It's only going to stop them from possibly restricting the apps that we use and the free speech that we have left.
Right. So, well, they've already, with COVID, they have restricted people meeting physically, and now they're moving to restrict people from being able to meet and organize and discuss online, regardless of the surveillance aspect. So I think that's a really valid point. A couple things I want to bring up about Parler. I never made a Parler account because I don't trust it. It was funded by the Mercer family, has ties to the whole Steve Bannon network and all of that. I don't trust any of those people. Steve Bannon is a crazy dude that used to work for Goldman Sachs and now basically works for this Chinese exile billionaire, trying to push us to war with China. Part of the Committee on the Present Danger China. The Committee on the Present Danger has had various reincarnations. This China one is the latest. The one before that was the one for the War on Terror. The one for China has a bunch of people from Project for a New American Century, including former CIA Director James Woolsey, who was also involved in Dark Winter and 9/11, right? And so Steve Bannon associating with those people and that whole network setting up Parler, I thought from the very beginning was suspect, didn't want to be involved. Beyond that, apparently you have to provide your social security number to get access to all of the features of Parler. That's a little suspect.
Yikes.
Also, you have people like Lynn Wood being allowed on that platform promoting pictures that are allegedly from Hunter Biden's laptop of child porn. And not only that, posting CP images on his Parler account, but urging people that follow him on Parler to download that picture and put it on their computer. Giving the FBI all they need to take you to prison if they find CP on your computer.
Exactly. Well, you know
what? Linwood that's a setup, 100%.
I don't know listen again, I don't know whether these people end up losing it, because I didn't really know what Linwood's background was. I had no idea he was the Richard.
He represented John Benet Ramsey's parents. That's one. So I don't know, but I think it's changed in the past couple of years. I mean, he's what represented Nick Sandman, who I think had a legitimate case with the Covington thing. But in Kyle Rittenhouse and stuff, these sort of like very elevated figures in the MAGA sphere. So I think, he's definitely in it for a particular reason. I've seen him boosted also by a lot of people that used to focus specifically on Epstein and other stuff. And that really concerns me. I mean, this guy has predicted, just like Q, right? Saying stuff like, oh, there was this blackout, localized blackout at the Vatican. So the Pope was arrested and the Pope shows up to do mass the next day. And people are still following the dude.
That's my point. And it's still going. And it's like, guys, we're a week plus out where they're putting Biden in there. Okay, that's what's happening. Now, whether or not, all right, this is what I want to know. Mm-hmm. Whether or not something goes into a monkey wrench scenario, and, I'll tell you what, so I stayed at Tim Pool's house when I first got into DC before. Well, I mean, again, I stayed with Luke was there. I forget who he had for guests, but talking to these guys.
That's fine. I just don't. He used to work for Vice, right?
Yes, absolutely. Cool. Well, we were talking about stuff like that. He actually was telling me about how he took pictures with, I think it was the Mexican president's daughter at Davos in 2018, or he was talking about something and being at Davos.
Yeah, that sounds not normal.
Anyway, I'm just saying.
Let's hang out with the World Economic Forum.
I'm just saying. So Tim is very adamant that he believes that a civil war is going to happen. If there was anything,
it's been engineered for decades.
That's why I want to ask you what your opinion is on this. Listen, guys, I know that there's a lot of characters that I've interacted with over the years that people have very strong opinions, some based in evidence, some otherwise about. I'm trying to, listen, I'm trying to recruit as many people as I can to fight this fucking thing any way we can.
No, I understand. Yeah. I mean, I was saying something to that effect earlier, right?
Yeah.
But, when people have really big platforms and propagate narratives that I find problematic and that play into the hands of what the state is trying to do right now to the little people, or trying to exacerbate this hyper-partisan divide that is key to the coming war on domestic terror, because they can't really have the war on domestic terror without some sort of civil war fracturing or setup there where you're having one faction trying to take down the other faction and vice versa. They have to have the state for their war on domestic terror has to have some sort of support from the population, at least one faction, in order to be able to continue to advance that. Right. And there's a lot of people on the so-called left right now that are so gung-ho about this until it turns out that the new boogeyman becomes Antifa and then it's all turned against them. Nice. And then you'll have the same people freaking out now being like, yes, they're the real terrorists, not us. And it's going to be like that back and forth. And so that's why I have a problem with people on either side that propagate these hyper-partisan stuff, because they're playing right into the hands of that. And that's why I always try and stress this is the elite versus us. We have to come together to stop this. People on the left do not like giant corporations like Silicon Valley. Obviously, people on the right don't like Silicon Valley now either. Why haven't we stormed Silicon Valley?
It's so funny you said that. So again, that is one of the things other than the operating system that we literally talked about last night. I just want to let people know. So Whitney Webb, you're on the page of some of these people behind the scenes.
Yeah, but the point is the right can't lead that. You know what I mean? Because it plays into their narrative. All of the local action people take to try and fight against this in the U.S., it has to be bipartisan, period.
Well, I'll say
or
this.
It's going to play into this narrative.
So one of the people that I came across over the summer, her name is Kara Castronova. She's an ex-pro boxer, Golden Gloves, Madison Square Garden. She was on The Biggest Loser as a coach, the whole nine. She's gotten very active in the anti-vaccinations and lockdowns in New York City. She's Long Island. She's been doing things there. She reached out to BLM, and they marched last week and are going to continue together against the vaccinations, against the lockdowns. So she's as MAGA as it gets, and she's getting it now. She's reaching out.
Well, that's really positive. But unfortunately, there's a lot of people that are not doing that, and that's why I think it's imperative. The more, it's really important, too, that we take this out of the virtual world and we take this to talk in discussions with our friends and our family. And when you're doing that, people that actually know what's going on, it's you must try and bring down this hyper-partisan stuff and show that this is really a war between us and the billionaires and their political puppets in power. And that if we can't recognize who the real enemy is, we will lose, period.
I agree.